Hello everybody, it's Mark Sage here. Welcome to the latest area webinar, Scoping and Scaling XR Technologies in the Energy Sector. So we're looking at some real practical examples, strategies, and how these companies have successfully implemented and supported the implementation. We have an amazing set of panelists with us today who are going to share their information. We have 4 experts from the industry, and thank you for your time, gentlemen. What I'd like to do is just ask you to introduce yourself and a little bit about your role. After we've done this, everybody, we're going to have a quick poll, and then we'll get on to the kind of more questions. And remember, you have an opportunity to ask some questions as well. So Troy, can I hand it over to you first to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Troy Wood. I lead marketing for HTC VIVE in North America.
Thanks, Troy. M?
Hey
guys, can you hear me?
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Hey, good morning, everyone. My full name is Athicha Dhanormchitphong. I just go by M. That's my nickname. That's a whole nother story. I work for ExxonMobil. I've been with them for about 20 years, and my current role is the digital reality ecosystem architect.
Fantastic. Thank you, Em. Todd.
Yeah, my name is Todd Daniel. I'm the managing partner here at Shining Box Interactive. We are a software consultancy and development house. We've been creating XR content since about 2014.
Fantastic. Thank you, Todd. And David.
Okay, my name is David Moreno, the Chief Business Development and Marketing Officer of Virtualware. We are a technology company. We deliver, enterprise software based on real-time 2D technology, very specialized in immersive technology. Since the company was founded like 20 years ago. I've been 18 years in the company in different roles, working across industries and also in the energy sector. So very happy to be here and share, our knowledge for the last, 18 years in the industry.
Thank you, David. I was trying to do it in the Spanish accent as in David. But,
next time. Mark.
Next time. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, as I've mentioned before, we're going to start off with a very simple poll. It's interesting for us and interesting for the rest of the ecosystem to see the type of people we have on the call today. Okay, so we have a lot of software providers, about 50%, some enterprises deploying, which is important. Not so much on the hardware side. That may be a little bit of a reflect. Oh, now it's changing. Okay. Let me press end poll. Yeah, there's keep doing it in real time. I'm going to press end poll, and hopefully that gives us a finishing now. Okay, so kind of software, a little bit of everything, which is great as well. So what we're going to do is we have a number of questions that I'm going to ask these experts, going through what I see the kind of full life cycle of XR deployment. So we're going to start with this first one, which is one of the things that I always tend to do on my panels, but it's about what business problems can be solved using XR. Okay, so identifying key applications and solving business problems. How do you determine where XR can make the most significant impact in your organization? Em, I'd like to start with you if I can, sir.
Sure. Hey, thanks for the question. So how do you determine where XR can make the most significant impact in your organization? There's a lot of ways to slice and dice this, Mark. But I can tell you what happened inside ExxonMobil and how we determined that, right, is really around proof of concepts. We started off with a POC, and at that time, really, and if you wanted the grassroots, right, it was like, hey, we have a 3D model. Let's try to visualize this. Okay, great. What else we're going to do with it? Well, what are those other applications and use case? And so we started looking into training at that time. My colleague, Kyle, obviously, he came back to me and was telling me, hey, look, we should look at design reviews as well, for XR, because there's a lot of value. Ultimately, that led to the creation of Immersive Technology Studios, but how we determined that value was really partner up with the business to do those proof of concepts, or like for a learning example, like, well, what is your business problem? Well, at that time, training our basic operators, right, was really through taking them out in the field, but at the same time also having your own PowerPoint presentations, keyword your own, right? So then other presenters had their own versions. The visuals and the photos, one, did not do justice, and two, they weren't aligned. So even communications and the making sure people understand exactly like this could happen to you out in the field. Be able to what we say is really you're trying to scar the brain, and really to do that, and so that way folks understand the impacts, they can take things seriously before they actually get boots on the ground. That's what we started focusing on at that time as potential significant impact, was let's try to create some type of training where we can all align visually, so that way when we do communicate that to our operators, right, we are communicating the same message as well as the same visuals. That's one, but I can keep on going on, but I figured I'd pass it on to the next folks.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Em. And the kind of key point there was about, doing some testing in pilot work as well. So Todd, let me pass that question to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of a different viewpoint from our end, since we are an external vendor. So we're a provider, right? If we get called in from a client who's exploring some of these pieces, our biggest sort of questions when we're doing our initial meetings, like, okay, like, what does your company think you're focusing on? And they'll usually give us an area that their company wants to do immersive training around. And typically, either that's being led from, as Em previously mentioned, a proof of concept or an internal test. Also, it could be just how their current industry is moving. So what competitors are doing in your area has a very large impact on also like how your company or corporation drives training efforts as well, especially in oil and gas. In our area, we see a lot of sharing of labor pools throughout the year and throughout sites. So having at least getting to a point where you're building like consistent engagement through your training material, we've seen has been really helpful for them. And mostly that's us coming in and being like, okay, what are you looking to do? Here's some examples of what we've done in the past. Let's figure out what your underlying problem is and how this technology can or cannot help solve that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Todd. That's great. David.
Yeah, actually, you would mention like training. It's a main and a key, area that is solving, problem with XR technology. For instance, to having more hands-on timing, because you can replicate in XR. You can replicate, those physical replicas in virtual reality. For instance, you can train more people. Okay, and having more time for training them, and even connect that with physical stuff. That's what we did with GE Vernova with the nuclear business side, for instance, because they would like to have more hands-on simulator, not only, that, but also not having to bring everybody to one location where they have the facilities to train their people. So now they can bring that training tool anywhere. That's one of the areas, but we have more. We have mentioned like, design review, and mentioned some of this. For the product team, if you want to accelerate that, delivery of your product, you can review that design instead of physically, using virtually, and in a collaborating way with, people connected remotely with different locations, even connecting with your provider of some of the parts of that assets that you are creating. For marketing as well, in some of the cases, you can't bring your physical stuff to your customer. So the only way to do that is having those virtual replicas and actually validate with your customer those virtual replicas. You don't need to travel. You don't need to, build any physical mock-up. Or for instance, even for educational institutions, we work a lot with, vocational training centers that are very, very connected, or university with the energy industry, to train their students. So I think there are many, many areas, standard, I would say, areas that today, even a couple of years ago, XR is, solving real, business use cases.
Great. Thank you, David. And Troy.
So I don't think any of us are, absent of having like an idea where XR can solve pretty much every process or function in an organization. I think it's probably best to find an area where when you set up your pilot program, you're going and putting it through all the paces. Like it's going to serve as a launch pad for everything you do after that. Training is one of the most straightforward ones to roll out, but it also requires, a lot of diligence across like IT, the infrastructure team, network, deployment, getting people to actually adopt and use it. So that's a good place to start. When you're doing that, though, you want to keep in mind, like, we're also going to need solutions that work for design viz and even secure data visualization with digital twin and operations viz. And then how do those devices work or, interact with the ones that are out in the field that we're using, for digital overlay with AR. or do we do some MR? Like, it's about how do I set up this program to where it's going to tell me everything I know for what's ahead.
And Troy, let me just ask you.
Troy is.
Sorry, go on now.
Sorry, Mark. I was going to support Troy on that because that's the journey that we led down, right? What I was talking about was really just the early stages to show that significant impact, right? And then from there, it did lay down to, hey, let's take this prototype that we have, let's bring it and share it and socialize it internally. But then from there, right, it leads to, for us, our vision is, well, how do you scale that, right, globally, immediately? Okay, well, when you go on that journey, it's exactly what Troy was talking about. You run into all these other solutions. And at that time, too, depending on the time frame, right, thinking about, like, some of the folks on these calls, you guys were in it from the beginning as well, too. But a lot of things that are here today were not here back then. And so a lot of those things had to be, in a way, skunk works or just, you know, influencing folks to create some of those solutions out there. So it's definitely been a journey for sure.
And funny enough, and that's basically what I was going to say. You know, to start with, it would have been the providers telling companies, hey, these are the problems that you can solve. Now, as they get more experience, and we're still at the tip of the iceberg, but they're coming back and saying, we need to do more, and we need to do better, or we need to scale, to your point, Em. So it's interesting. I think there's definitely a kind of a number of cycles going on. We probably, as an industry, need to be better at going back to the companies at the very start of their journey and showing the kind of benefits and the things that we can done, but also supporting the ones that have been with us all the way through, and the leading ones like Exxon and them. So, yeah, I think there's still some real challenges here to help companies understand some of the benefits. Understand what problems can be solved, which probably takes me on to my next question, if I can jump onto that. It's all about what I call show me the money. You know, how do you develop a business case? So how do you go from that, hey, we've got an idea, to, right, we're actually going to have a solid business plan that could be an ROI and in terms of return on investment, or a number of different kind of strategic things, but it needs to align an organization's goals and demonstrates value and things like that. So an interesting question. Todd, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, as an outside vendor, I think we have a unique perspective here. Em also talked to this a little bit earlier, the strength around, or the power around proof of concepts. Typically, when we're brought in, a lot of our clients either hear of us from word of mouth from other clients that they've interacted with us, or we meet them at an expo event. And in some cases, they don't have any XR content in their organization, so they could be starting from square one. And typically, when we interact with those clients, we always sort of suggest going down a proof of concept route. And it's great for them because in some cases, if you're building, if you're building a brand new department internally from scratch, you probably have a no or close to a low budget for doing a lot of that work. And in this case, it gives us the opportunity to help the internal team at the organization create something that has actual you can touch, you can interact with, and that goes a long way to helping them build a brand case or build a budget case for supporting immersive technology in their organization. Selfishly, this also helps us understand what it's like to work with that client. Our proof of concept stages are anywhere from like 2 to 6 weeks, but during that time, it really gives us a chance to interact with essentially the folks we'd be interacting with if we're doing a full-time product for them anyway. So it gives us exposure to some of their subject matter experts, lets us understand how we can pull existing information from inside of an organization to like create authentic training pieces, right? The proof of concept phase kind of sets everything up from the beginning. At the end of that process, we as developers have a really clear idea of what our development plan going forward looks like. And then our clients have a really good idea of what they're going to be getting on the back end, because we're giving them that proof of concept example. We're giving them like budget breakdowns and development schedules for the entirety of their product. For us, that's been really successful just because we're able to ingrain ourselves with the team at the organization, and we are lockstep in what we're delivering to them. So when it comes to finalizing the plan or getting the signatures where they're required, they can show actual information and reasons why a budget or a development schedule merits the time and cost.
Thank you, Todd. I'm going to ask everybody this as just a really quick answer. Have you ever been given a business case for an XR deployment before you've started a piece of work?
Yeah.
You have. Perfect. Okay. David, let's move on to you.
Yeah, basically, I agree with Todd. So, that test phase, is key. The first thing that when we approach a potential customer that is looking for XR technology, we tell them, this is a long term. This is not in the short term, okay? But this is very important, because if you think about a long-term strategy, because this technology is ready to be part of your, day-to-day business and operations, then it's different, the business case you build. This is not the business case for, okay, some marketing stuff for, next 2 months, and then, that's all. This is a long term. If we start with training or product development or even marketing, this is something you could use from now on. And the test phase is key. For instance, in our case, when we develop some virtual reality simulations for VIVE, the nuclear business part, along our platform, which is VIVE, that's our core business. They came to our offices. We are based in Spain. They came to our office to test the virtual reality simulator we did connecting to a physical asset. So they needed to trial, for instance, that tactile feedback to validate their technology. Although they can see that, and there are a lot of studies, research, HCC, do a great stuff on that, of the potential of these technologies to be applied in the enterprise. They need to validate that technology. And when they validate that technology, and then you build a business case, a 3 to 5 year business case, and then the business team or the business leader or your champion internally in that company, along with the IT team, and maybe the innovation team, and maybe the digitalization team, they go all together and then, try to ask for the money and the budget for the next year. So for me, it's important to have, somebody internal that push you. On the other side, try to bring, more departments involved. I think we will have another question regarding this later. And, they need to validate their technology. Although, we don't like the POC word, and we are done with that, because we really believe, and we see some of our customers taking the advantage of this technology. They need to validate their technology in their company. When they validate that, then you can scale faster, because you can say, hey, you in this department, go to talk to your brother in the other, or your sister in the other department, and say, hey, this works. And this company, again, Todd mentioned this, you can work with this company. Because another thing you need to test is how it is to work with that corporation, that corporation working with you. Because that's very important if you think in the long-term strategy. So I agree with the points that, Todd shared before.
One thing I forgot to mention and didn't was, that's for newer clients. If you're an existing client that already has an infrastructure for supporting these, you're probably coming to us for OTS, off-the-shelf content, or you're looking for content that maybe we've created that you want to customize. And that's a different sort of approach. But like David had said, when you're coming into this brand new as an organization, taking your time up front to really get an idea of what you're producing or turning out is your best chance, I think.
Okay, let me go over to Troy as well, and leaving them for last. From a hardware perspective, how does that bit work from a business plan? Because you're an element of it, and your insights first to the question. But if you can add a few about from a hardware perspective, great.
Yeah, I like what was said about reducing long-term costs. So it's easy to go with whatever the cheapest headset is and say, hey, let's roll this out everywhere. And it works for some things, but it doesn't often align with the long-term ambitions for the team that's rolling it out. And it certainly doesn't meet the requirements of the IT folks, based on how we've seen it scale in an enterprise environment. So you want to choose supportive, flexible partners on both the hardware and the software side. People who own their own manufacturing, have products in stock that can ramp with you, solutions that are compatible, like forwards and backwards, in terms of the device and the software ecosystem, all of the accessories, the trackers. It's ideal if it plays well with the other major devices that you use, because there's different, HMDs for different scenarios. So. And you also want it to work across mobile and tablet, because it's an IoT play. And you'll also want to make sure that it's supported on the commercial warranty side, like available maybe up to 5-year commercial warranty is a good thing to have. You also want to make sure, if you're a global company, that the solution providers can ship to the countries that you support. We've expanded into China shipping. which is important to some oil and gas providers as well. When we're thinking about reducing long-term costs, you also want to keep in mind, if you're doing scaled training deployments, you're going to need high throughput. You're going to need devices that don't break. When they do break, you're going to want to swap them out as quickly as possible. So devices that are ruggedized, reinforced bands with steel. Also, if you're getting so many people through a training, you don't want to have to kind of fuss and fiddle with the eye tracking. So someone who has like auto IPD and hot swappable batteries and the ability to plug in with your MDM provider and also be able to do remote configuration. So it's quite a bit on kind of matching the ambition of where your XR team, your innovation team, your leadership team are going to want to go as you prove out the business case that you're trying to solve. So you should have it built in, like how are we currently measuring this thing? What are the metrics milestones? If we hit those milestones, then we're going to scale to another, X deployment. And likely you're going to need some solution partners that have the ability to customize, that would be open for tinkering on the hardware and the software side to meet your organizational goals.
Great, Troy. I love the part about the KPI, A, having them, B, measuring them, and C, agreeing if they've met that you move on to the next phase. And that's something I've seen over the years that works really well to kind of get over that pilot purgatory. Okay, Em, over to you. I'm sure you have a bundle of business cases and stuff like that you've created and delivered when delivering XR solutions.
Well, definitely not just me alone. It was a lot of, we have a great team, internal and external as well, right? A lot of folks that really helped us achieve to where we are today. I don't think we are close to perfect or to where we are today, but I can share those learnings for sure. Iterations is the big word that came up to me when I read this question about how do you move from initial interest to a solid business plan that aligns with the organization's goals and demonstrates clear value. We had to iterate. So we went from, as mentioned, right, hey, POC, immersive learning, show that value. And it led to really, well, if I could see my 3D models for training, well, what else can we do with this? Well, I mentioned it, my buddy Kyle, he talked about design review. So we chased that as well, saw some values on that side. And then the questions came like, okay, well, great. What are we going to do about this? How do we scale that up again? And so, okay, well, let's create an internal service to manage all those expectations. Excuse me. And so from there, after managing those expectations, a lot of value in viewing my model internally as well. And I want to see that metadata behind it. So now we're starting to peel that layer, right? And as we start peeling that layer back, it really led to, well, how do you scale this up? Well, we need to own our models. Well, what format are these models? Are they proprietary? Are they interoperable? Are they open? Where are we keeping them? And so we went down this really deep rabbit hole because either you're visualizing that model for design reviews or immersive technology, and our mandate at that time was, hey, try to scale that out. The cost to create it at that time, right, and as well as even the solutions out there to manage it, right, for use cases or our folks and things like that, or even trying to gain adoption, trying to remove that misconception that this is just not a game device, right, that it could be used for enterprise. You're going up this uphill battle. And so iterations after iterations from VR led us to really, I'd say AR more than MR, right? We dabbled in MR here and there, but those hardware devices were not ready. And over time, it led to a 3D white paper. That white paper led at that time to, I think COVID hit, right? So COVID happened and we started tackling Connected Worker. It's really hands-free FaceTime at that time. Give me, the ability to phone a friend, be able to share documentation, things like that. But again, none of that was at a scale until we met an executive that, long story short, interviewed us and said, what was the root problem? And over the iterations that we were performing these POCs, we were documenting that data flow, and specifically the visual data, the 3D data, right? Because all the core of it was, well, how do you scale this out? And we're like, well, some of our 3D data is not interoperable. We don't own it. It doesn't flow all the way. And then we started realizing the VR, AR, MR, those are output devices. Same thing with a tablet, same thing with a cell phone, right? You're outputting that data. And so that started becoming a solid business plan of creating an ecosystem of digital realities. So then going back down to the foundation layer to say, we're going to have to understand how we capture and create our 3D data. And so let's make sure we democratize that. Where do we own all that content right now? How do we have access to it? How do we structure that data and organize it, right? And so then it led to, well, it needs to be centralized. It's all over the place. And what do we deliver that to? And what does delivery mean? And at that time, we were thinking it's transformation parameters, right? And so like if you convert, right, let's say a CAD over, I'm sorry, to a game engine asset, what happens to that metadata? What gets stripped? And so trying to understand that, but then it also led down to, well, what are the APIs called that we really need to? What's the off-road for that off-ramp? And then how do you consume these outputs into your use cases? And so then that became really our more solid business plan, is creating an ecosystem of digital realities where XR is an output to meet that, to really scale that out, right? And so that's really now our solid business plan, is the digital reality ecosystem.
Fantastic, thank you. It's a great insight into the wider kind of piece. I think you've touched on some of these. I know some of the other people touched on this. So we kind of understand, you know, it's a complex process. It's an iterative process, developing the business case, but we know that there's some kind of issues. We're focusing here a little bit on IT and infrastructure challenges. I've also added safety in there, which is very important. Remember, we are kind of talking, this is about the energy sector, so we should be focusing a little bit more on those kind of use cases. So you can see the question. I'm not going to read it out. I'll just remind the listeners that if they have any questions, please put them into the questions box, and we'll pick them up at the end. So on this one, David, where do we start with you?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I would love to, hear M on this. But, essentially, in the case what we learned in the last, 20 years, and actually, creating customized solutions for companies in the energy industry, across industries, this is key. There is always an IT challenge when you implement these technologies in the enterprise. It's technology, so that's why the IT team and the IT infrastructure should be involved. That's why a couple of years ago we created VIVE, that it's more like an infrastructure platform provided where companies can deal with some of these challenges. For instance, equipment updates. In the platform that we provide, any content that you create or any application that you create over that platform, it's going to work with the new VIVE provision, for instance, without you doing anything. So if you have a team internally, in your company, or you are working with a software developer and you have, in our case, our platform as the core, all that content and the application that you are creating, it's going to be updated directly without you doing anything. So we try to, diminish those problems. And then in regards of security, which is key, and some of the industries, energy, it's a critical infrastructure, let's say, industry. We try to certify all our processes with, international security validations. So, for instance, we have the ISO 27001 that validates that, all the platform and all the processes behind the development of the platform and the deployment are secure and has that data privacy. Because always you deal with the IT team. And for instance, when you are deploying, it's about, have you opened this port? Because, for instance, you need that to be open, and that takes, weeks or months. Or, for instance, in our case, we also deliver not only on the cloud, but on premise. So this is something that it's very enterprise. And we try to offer solutions that diminish these challenges. And the technology is ready. So that's why, again, I would like to listen to M on this, because I think he has suffered some of this internally.
And we will get to M. I'm just going to jump to Troy next to pick on his points.
I'll do my best M impression. I'll have to turn my camera off, though.
Go on in, Troy.
Oh, can you not hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We're just waiting for you to some of your what you see and what you're doing to support something.
So get to know your IT teams. It's not one conversation, it's 50. You need to really, find some champions there to help to guide you on where to make your investment on the hardware and software side and how to navigate stuff that's not part of your remit, your day to day. So they're your buddy, your most trusted partner in making sure that you adopt solutions that are scalable and supported, so that in a year, when your POC proves out, instead of IT saying, "Oh, sorry, this doesn't meet the requirements for our firewall," or this has components manufactured in non-TAA approved countries, or requires a social login, those things don't happen if you bring them along from the very beginning. So you're going to want to make sure that it works within, your existing infrastructure. So network, cloud, on-prem, works with all of the MDM providers that your company already uses. Intune, 42 Gears, VMware, that sort of thing. Works with single sign-on. Because even if you're just using XR for training, you're going to want, and I mentioned this before, a solution that grows with you as you expand into those other use cases. So digital twin, facility planning, data visualization, that sort of thing. So you're going to want solutions that have built security into their design process from the beginning, instead of just kind of slapping it on at the end. So yeah, all of the certifications, you're going to want the TAA, the 889, someone who has a history of deploying into secure environments, that sort of thing. And then also can support, more complex scenarios. Like there's an oil rig that wanted to do training there in Papua New Guinea, and their connectivity was poor, so they needed a private 5G network. So go with solution providers that are able to kind of address the full spectrum of what your company is looking to achieve.
Thank you, Troy.
Can I share a screen? It's probably the easiest way to do it, because obviously it's ironic too, right? Because I'm using only audio, and our project's vision is moving to a visual way of working. So if you don't mind, if I can just share a slide to support what I'm talking about. So capture, store, deliver, consume, digital thread. Encourages digital consumption and many uses. I talked about how we iterated all the way down to it's the data level. And I mentioned about democratization of capture. So it led us to making sure that our data is open and interoperable. I know you see the word digital twin, and that means a lot of things for other folks, and that's a whole nother talk of how we were working together in the background. Again, iterations to really help shape that definition of a digital twin inside our corporation. But back to the infrastructure, the foundation had to be laid. And so we had to really control what that data came in, and it's open and interoperable, right? So what are those modalities that we really care about? We care about reality captures. We care about our engineering models from asset to component level. We also care about our interactive or real-time 3D gaming assets as well. We had to make sure we understand how to structure that as well. And then storage had to be created for that, centrally called cloud, right? And really this whole concept of making sure we separate data from software. So own that data and make sure that it is interoperable for plug and play agnostically. And this is really API helps to deliver. If you need to enrich your data, right, with 1D, such as your ERPs, projects, maintenance, and engineering, again, use cases will drive how you consume that data, whether it's just the visuals or interlaced with contextualized data like 1D. That's how we are able to really deliver that data to be outputted. For example, so then if I have my existing scans coming in from my chemical refinery plant that now gets centrally stored, right, and delivered, so that way ShinyBox, for example, can continue to deliver, right, these awesome modules from there for training. And then those assets can then be, anyone's new ones can be fed back to storage and then re-delivered if need to for other consumption use cases. Now, obviously, there will be some transformations along the way, right, and some learnings, but that's the foundation that had to be laid so that way we can enable many uses of that data. The long story short, the cost to create the content to be ingested in XR it's not cheap. And you need to understand really like, well, once you go down this journey, at least for ExxonMobil, we started seeing the value of visualization and 3D heavily. And it led to really digital twins, and digital twins really helps you lay that foundation on how you create more content to be ingested into XR as well. Hopefully that makes sense, but happy to answer any questions on that. Oh, actually, you know what, here, and let me show you the scalability side, right? Because why are you doing this to scale this out? I mean, this is what we're doing with immersive technology, but all these models they were reused. So design reviews, but then from there, taking some of those designs and visualizing that on a different output, right? And spatially anchoring that. Providing, again, hands-free FaceTime. Creating these immersive training and design reviews, down to even then now reusing that to break that apart for augmented field procedures, right? I just want a 3D model. I want my animations, and I want to line it up with my procedures. So that way we then can use a tool, again, a consumption tool to do that. We do things where we're doing drones to capture these, creating mesh models. And for these mesh models, then we're providing deep learning solutions to say, hey, there's an anomaly up here. Now imagine then that leads you to the foundation of data for geospatial. So then it leads you down this path of like, well, GPS, visual positioning, indoor positioning. So that way I can localize myself. So for an operator, imagine an operator being here, being able to localize himself and realizing, hey, I can get a visual all the way up here down to my device. Again, whether it's an iPhone, a ruggedized tablet, an AR headset, right? Those use cases will drive it. But we got to make sure that the data is ready, the foundation and infrastructure is available, so that way our operators can use their right consumption platform with the right information at the right time. That's how we're setting up really this infrastructure for the digital route ecosystem.
Perfect. Thanks very much. It was great getting some of your insights. I think we've got Todd, the last one, his question.
Yeah, I think ours is a little different. The only recommendation I would make here is if you're someone who is capturing or creating your own internal content, as an external vendor, we are not a platform holder. We don't have any of those pieces, but we at least educate ourselves on the options that our customers either have or might need. So if you're working with somebody external to your company, understand that they should also have an understanding of the platform you want to use. So if you have, the vendor should at least help you, point you in the right direction for finding a platform if one doesn't exist. But if you already have an existing platform, that vendor should be open to creating content, whether that be entire simulations or just assets that work within your particular platform. Emmett mentioned this, David had mentioned this as well, but getting more use out of that data or more use out of those assets is the key to driving ROI. So being able to reuse the stuff that you're purchasing is important, and your vendor should help you be able to do that.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to take a little bit of a time check. We have a couple of questions, a little bit of an announcement, and some Q&A as well. And we've got 15 minutes left. So if we can move on to question 4, and maybe, we talked about some of this stuff. So if we can just kind of reduce this to a few minutes each. So Troy, let's start with you in terms of engaging with stakeholders, something I see a lot on. We put some departments in there, but what's your experience and how do you engage with these stakeholders so they successfully support XR projects?
Yeah, collaborate early, simplify it, rely on them as the experts, find your champions in each of these areas, see which systems they're working on and try to integrate with them instead of vice versa. And then as it proves out, you scale and they're your champions showing that they're part of whatever efficiency you're helping to drive within their function.
Fantastic. Great answer. I'm coming to you. I guess I'd be interested on, is it different from when you first started engaging with the stakeholders to, you've obviously been doing this for a while and doing amazing work. Is it different now? Can you give us a kind of a timeline of engagement and how that works?
Sure. When we first started, Mark, I think you showed the title too, that I work at the Digital Garage. So I'll start from there, right? We utilized that room as a startup inside the enterprise. Really helped completely transform everybody, the team's mindset, honestly, right? To make sure that everybody that walks through these doors, I know we're all ExxonMobil, but treat them as customers and use this experience as, hey, let's say this is your own company. How would you treat everyone? And so folks that came in, honestly, stakeholders or not, we started creating relationships. And those relationships will lead you to those stakeholders sooner or later. But those relationships, how you create them, is really how you treat those people, right? If you've got funding and the POC is viable based on the previous questions that you guys talked about, right? We ran through those graphs. Well, great, fund it. If you don't have it, but you've heard all those other similar business problems, then say, hey, I know somebody else similar and you guys should talk, right? Just really good faith. Good faith really leads you back to, hey, over time, iterations, right? They naturally came back to the digital garage to basically say, I've got these other use cases. And that's where we started mapping that data flow and these other big problems, to the point where now this ecosystem naturally just pulls stakeholders to basically say, well, we can point towards that because it has foundation, it has infrastructure. And honestly, from there, right, it started addressing really some of the bigger challenges on how to rescale out, moving to a visual way of working, whether it is immersive learning, turnaround, scoping, planning, additive manufacturing, and so forth, right? The foundation was laid, so over time it led to organic engagement. But if you wanted, like, well, if I don't have that, what tools do I need? There wasn't one tool. There really was not one tool. You're talking about the rule of three, right? Say it 3 times to 3 different people in 3 different ways, because just because you heard a naysayer once, even a stakeholder, you shouldn't let that shut you down, right? At the same time, too, use other forms of communication internally, because if you're trying to get to those stakeholders, it may not be a meeting. It could be a digital signage. It could be on a social media platform that your company uses. It could be on LinkedIn and you're making a post that is relevant to them while they're reading it. But you got to find a way to plant those seeds and give it time. Those things, it just really depends on really the timing, honestly, right? And Dre didn't happen overnight. It took, honestly, about 7-8 years of POCs to really understand what was the root problem and how would we try to tackle this. And still to this day, we are still constantly trying to figure out, well, what is next? What is the higher value? Who are the next stakeholders that we want to make sure that we continue to gain adoption and so forth. So it's not a one single bullet. I'd say try various options and, understand your culture as well as your communication channels.
Thank you, Em. Todd.
Yeah, I think that Troy and Em both spoke to it, but it's organizational agility, right? So internally knowing exactly where you have to turn to get the help that you need, but also when you're looking at a vendor, from our perspective, we need to be very open to working with different members of the team as well on our client side. So in some cases, if we have a point of contact, they're not a subject matter expert on IT infrastructure, or they're not a subject matter expert on the HR requirements for training. And in some cases, they may need our help to meet with those folks, share the information we're looking to find or present a solution for. We just need to be open to working with those different teams. So just keep that in mind as well. You're not dealing with one person as an external vendor. You're dealing with lots of internal teams or organizations as well. So just get ready to support that.
And David, any kind of additional insights? I know it's...
Yeah, I think we have said all, and the important thing is that IT is going to be there. Okay, so they probably, if you are a platform provider or application provider, they will see, okay, is this, better than the others? Even though they don't know anything, they will get the request and say, well, I got this platform provider. I will research if I find another one. Then they will compare, they will do that kind of IT stuff, because at the end, they will be involved in the long-term deployment of this if there is any issue, any challenge or whatever, because this is technology. They are key. And on the other side, you have, business team or the leaders of the different departments, from training, product development, marketing, or whatever. You will probably, have another HR depending on where you are involved. But again, Todd said this. There's a group decision. There's a one-person decision. So you need to find the champion in, each of the departments are going to be involved, even in innovation or digitalization, because we all agree that this is not new, this technology, but still we are at the early stages of implementation. of this. So in some companies, even the innovation of digitalization, digital transformation teams lead or are part of this kind of initiatives. So again, there's a group decision.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Can I add something? Because David actually just struck a memory of mine as well too. Is engaging our stakeholders, right? Again, multiple iterations, but like specifically for XR and learning, we took our executive to ITSec or ITSec. Are you guys aware of that conference?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I figured everybody on the call would, right? And our executive was not. And our explanation to him was, hey, this is military, this is education, right? It's our tax dollars at work. So in terms of investment, that's your money as well that's being spent. We should learn as well from them to see. And once he walked through even the convention floor, just the magnitude of the amount of solutions out there, right? Just really to defend our country, that led to, oh my gosh, where are we today on our side for training? Okay, so now that I see where the country is, adjacent industries, long story short, what can we do to leverage that? Because those dollars are being spent, right? And again, it may be adjacent industries, but just wanted to share that as well.
Yeah, thank you. And it's important. It's one of the things I talk a lot when I'm doing talks into the members. Have a look at what industries, maybe even not connected, not adjacent industries, but you can see the use cases tend to be the same when it comes to this technology. So you can learn a lot and see what kind of solutions that they're working with. Okay, so this is the last question before we go into a Q&A, and we've got one other kind of announcement. And again, please, this could be a whole hour within itself. So it's a conversation that comes up and kind of gets hot for a while and goes down again. But Em, I'm going to start with you about some of the ethical and privacy concerns. Is this something you see a lot? You hear your staff talking about, or are they more just focused on getting jobs done? In a few sentences, yeah. Well.
Yeah, it's part of our process. So if there's a new application, whether it's going to be evaluated or already considered, right, as a master service agreement or so forth, you're going to go through a risk assessment with us. And it is you're talking about, if it's a SaaS solution, you're going through a cloud assessment questionnaire, you're going through security questionnaires, but we also go through data privacy as well. So we do ask what type of information is being collected, and then that gets shared back to the business lines that are utilizing that to make sure they understand the risks as well. But for the ecosystem right now, again, a lot of it is visual. So in terms of collecting employee data and things like that, I mean, we're really just collecting their information for single sign-ons and things like that, which is just IDs and so forth. Other than that, I mean, in terms of data sources, again, we're pulling contextualized data, so equipment data, ERP data, and things, project data, and things like that. So it's not anything detailed employee-wise. And at XR, learning and design reviews, I mean, a lot of it's just logging again. So we do really stay at that level. We're not tracking our employees or so forth like that. We do have a union. And so there are things in terms of collecting details that are extremely sensitive that we must take our time in. And we take that data privacy process extremely serious.
Thank you. Todd, a quick view on this?
Yeah, mine's going to be a cop-out. So we do whatever our clients want us to do. Some clients have a built-in LMS that they've used already, or they're getting an LNRS, so they're setting those pieces up, or they have existing data management systems that they want us to plug metrics into. And those metrics range from, like Em said, single sign-on to discrete sign-on, performance tracking, those pieces. It really just depends on what your organization is capturing. And we just make sure that we adhere to those requirements for each individual client. So as an external vendor, it requires you to be very, very nimble and to adapt based on your client need.
Perfect. David?
Well, this is the first, I would say the first or the second question that you get from the IT team when you start a conversation with them. It's about, compliance with, security data. When we started to pay more attention to this, like 4 or 5 years ago, when we started working with the Spanish Military Health School and actually with VIVE as well, which are, critical infrastructure that they have critical data Okay, I would say that way. Although today, even automotive transportation, any industry pay a lot of attention to privacy standards. So that's why, what we did, which is, as a platform provider, so we can say and certify that these platforms and the applications surrounding this and the whole ecosystem complies with, international standards. So I think this is one of the questions that you get when you implement in large corporations, at least, because you will go through the IT team. And, and this is not about, I have this in the cloud, in AWS and, Microsoft Azure or whatever. This is about the whole process, how you keep that data secure. And a good way to validate, it's being certified.
Thank you. And Troy, the last word with your good self.
Yeah, there's being upfront with your employees and saying, hey, here's what we're capturing, and here's why, and here's what it will be used for, and here's what it will be used for now versus later on. Like being upfront about all of those things and allowing an opt-out, a right to refuse, is critical, in my opinion. Then there's the security concerns from the outside, and that could be network, it could be cloud, it could be all sorts of different things. I'm thinking through the IoT ecosystem. So having solutions that have like integrations with Zscaler, zero trust architecture, as David was saying, like have all of the ISO privacy and security certifications for the software side. Any sort of object that's tracked, whether it's eye, face, body, hand, physical objects, that's data as well. And so being very clear on, okay, what are we capturing? How is that reflected in the log files? How is that data being used or disposed of after a session? Like all of those things need to be thought through. And in my opinion, it's better to be upfront, with your employees so that they can make the choice, in the degree that they would like that data repurposed.
Perfect. Okay, that has taken us to the top of the hour, and I want to be, everybody's time is very precious. We have got a couple of questions. I do think I know, Troy, you've answered them, but we will come back to you guys probably with a written bit because we are running the end of time. But I think nearly all of us here will be, or potentially going to be at AES, Augmented Enterprise Summit, 15th to the 17th. I certainly will be coming over from the UK. Troy or David, do you want to just speak to this a little bit and what you've got planned there? And I'd love to meet up with anybody who will be there as well. So,
my team is going to be there, actually, along with HTC VIVE booth, just showcasing, in this case, our platform view and some of the use cases. And, the team who's going to be there is going to be very, very happy to continue the discussion that we're starting today about scaling, let's say, XR across industries, not only, in energy, but also in other industries. So, we invite you all to attend there and reach out to them at the HTC team, because actually we will be showcasing, I guess Troy will mention this, the new, focused version from HTC VIVE as well.
Yeah, we have a new headset. I also am going to be hosting a panel that's kind of similar to what we were discussing today, but it's on how to go bigger, how to scale your proof of concept by the thousands and tens of thousands. So we'll have Boeing and Smurfit Westrock and Lockheed and a number of others on that. So invite you to join.
Perfect. Yes. And I'm lucky enough to be chairing day 2 and running a couple of panels, one on marketing in XR, which I'm really looking forward to, and also a set of providers. So I'm getting the boxing gloves out for the providers and see who wins that battle. But just wanted to thank the panelists, done an amazing job. I think there's, as you probably heard, some real amazing insights. Thank you for listening. Please reach out to us. It's important as an ecosystem that we keep promoting, we keep delivering this thought leadership, because I still think we're at the tip of the iceberg. So lots and lots of opportunities. So David, Troy, Todd, thank you very much. And thank you very much for listening.